What if your worst enemy became your fake husband, and you couldn't resist falling for him? My assistant, Elliot Porter, found me in the remote mountain village just 5 minutes after my memory had returned. He dropped to his knees and clutched my legs, exclaiming, "Ms. Clark, thank goodness you're alive." Suddenly, a shirtless man burst out of the house and kicked Elliot to the ground. "Who said you could touch my wife's legs? Get away from her, you creep." Samuel Collins stood there, towering at 6 feet 3, his body sculpted to perfection. His chiseled abs were flawless, though they were marred by kisses and scratches. Elliot's jaw dropped. "Mr. Collins?" Samuel shot him a fierce glare, but when he turned to me, his expression softened instantly. "Don't worry, honey. I won't let this creep hurt you." I stared at him, speechless. When I didn't respond, Samuel grew nervous. He stepped closer, his demeanor shifting to that of a giant, sulky Samoyed. He bent down, nuzzling my cheek with his nose and lips, and whispered, "Honey? What's wrong?" His lips were cool, but they felt like molten lava. Without thinking, I pushed him away. Samuel stumbled back, his handsome face a picture of shock. His sharp, almond-shaped eyes widened in disbelief, and then, to my utter surprise, they welled up with tears. You pushed me?" he choked out. For him, Elliot promptly fainted. Honestly, I couldn't blame him. 5 minutes earlier, I had woken up in bed with Samuel hovering over me, his hands gripping my ankles as he moved with a mix of dominance and tenderness. It was more shocking than waking up to see my father on top of me. So, I fainted too, though I'd never admit it was less about the shock and more about, well, whatever had happened before I passed out. After yelling at me in frustration, Samuel stormed back into the room in a huff. Elliot slowly regained consciousness, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Ms. Clark, you and Mr. Collins, are you both possessed?" I couldn't blame him for asking. The rivalry between the Clark and Collins families was legendary in Prosperia. Samuel and I were the heirs to that feud. Born on the same day, raised in the same neighborhood, we'd been competing since childhood, first in school, now in business. Wherever we crossed paths, chaos followed. If we were at the same bar, we'd argue over who could drink more, and if one of us lost, we'd sue the other just to prove a point. This trip to the mountains had been for business, separate projects, of course. But a storm hit, our cars collided, and we both ended up injured and amnesic. The villagers mistook us for a married couple and put us in the same room. And then, we slept together. My first time, something I'd saved for the man of my dreams, was stolen by Samuel freaking Collins. But karma was on my side. I'd regained my memory first, and he was still foolishly calling me, honey. Now, it was time for payback. I didn't go inside to comfort the angry Samuel. Instead, I thanked the villagers and motioned for Elliot to follow me to the car. Samuel was waiting by the vehicle, his face icy, holding a brick in his hand. I frowned. "What are you doing? Are you running away with him?" Samuel's voice trembled, his eyes reddening. When his gaze shifted to Elliot, it turned murderous. "If you're trying to steal my wife, I'll have to kill you." Elliot nearly wet himself. Typical Samuel. Even with amnesia, he was still a menace. I quickly stepped forward, wrapping my arms around Samuel's neck and planting a soft kiss on the corner of his mouth. "Honey, who said I was running away? You've got it all wrong." Samuel froze, looking down at me. "Then where are you going with him?" "He's just our driver. He's here to take us home, to our home." I met Samuel's clear, innocent eyes and pouted, playing the part of the perfect wife. "Darling, I've remembered everything now. We have a home in the city. You take care of the house, and I handle the business. Let's go back and sleep in our big, comfy bed, okay? This hard mattress is killing my back." My ability to lie was honed from years of dodging Samuel's relentless tattling during high school. Now, the tables had turned. Would he buy it? The brick fell from Samuel's hand with a thud. He spun me around, pressed me against the car, and kissed me deeply, his lips demanding and urgent. Samuel, I moaned between kisses. "Someone's watching." The sound of our lips and teeth mingling was unmistakably intimate. With his memory loss, Samuel seemed unusually fixated on kissing. I should have recorded this moment of him so passionately kissing me. It'd be perfect to tease him about it for the rest of his life. I gestured to Elliot, signaling him to secretly take a photo. However, Elliot stood frozen, looking as traumatized as if he'd just witnessed 2 Disney princesses making out. Later, in a quiet corner of the hospital, Elliot whispered nervously, "Ms. Clark, are you sure this is a good idea? What if Mr. Collins regains his memory?" Samuel was known for his ruthlessness and his tendency to hold grudges. In Prosperia, aside from me, no one dared to stand up to him. If he regained his memory and found out I had been deceiving him, he'd make sure I pay dearly. But I wasn't going to give him the chance. Did he really think I was the kind of woman he could just sleep with and walk away from? I scoffed. Before he regains his memory, I'll make sure he's ruined. Earlier, Samuel had undergone a series of brain scans. The doctor said that if he hadn't recovered his memory by now, it might take a long time. Good. The longer, the better. Ideally, he'd remember everything just as Colin's group went bankrupt. As I left the hospital, I got a call from the office. A major international client was arriving in Prosperia tonight. I knew they were here to discuss a cross-border project with Samuel, and this client happened to be my longtime college crush, Ethan Fletcher. Last time, I'd nearly closed the deal, but Samuel had sabotaged it at the last minute. Tonight was my chance for revenge. I slipped into a backless, form-fitting gown that perfectly concealed my scheming heart. The moment I stepped out of the dressing room, I collided with a solid chest. Who are you planning to wear that for? A deep, magnetic voice rumbled above me. A cold, rough hand slid up my bare back, sending shivers down my spine. I looked up, only to meet Samuel's narrowed, intense gaze. For a moment, it felt like the old, cunning Samuel was back. My confidence wavered slightly, but then his hand moved from my back to my chest, his grip tightening. The mix of pain and pleasure made me flush with anger. I slapped his hand away. What are you doing? Get your hands off me. Samuel froze, his sharp eyes softening instantly. His voice trembled with hurt. Honey, you hit me? You're already tired of me because I've lost my memory. You're successful. You have that handsome assistant by your side, and he even hugged your legs. But I'm just a burden at home. Now I can't even touch you. Maybe it's time I just leave. He choked up, ready to stand and walk away, his handsome face filled with despair. For a moment, I actually felt like a monster. And, more importantly, he couldn't leave now. My plan wasn't ready yet. Gritting my teeth, I grabbed his hand and placed it back on my chest. Darling, what are you talking about? You can touch me. Go ahead. Samuel's sadness vanished instantly. He didn't hold back, his hand tightening as he pulled me onto the couch with him. His lips replaced his hand. My fingers tangled in his short hair as I bit my lip, gasping out, Honey, tonight, you'll come with me to the banquet, but you have to wear earplugs the whole time. Why earplugs? Well, the doctor said you need to avoid external stimulation, so no TV or phone either. He had too many connections in Prosperia. Isolating him was crucial. Before I could say more, I heard a rip as Samuel tore my backless gown. I was about to explode, but then his pitiful voice came from my stomach. Honey, I accidentally ripped it. I'm so useless. You're not mad at me, are you? Fine. I'd tolerate it, for now. I arrived at the banquet with Samuel, a full 30 minutes late. My legs were shaky, and I could barely walk in my heels. Samuel's arm around my waist didn't help. The marks on my collarbone were so bad that I had to switch to a modest gown. My plan to seduce my crush in a stunning dress was completely ruined. Damn it, I shot Samuel a glare. You mutt, did you have to bite me so hard? When I bankrupt you, I'll buy you as my personal servant and whip you with chili sauce every day. Samuel, wearing noise-canceling earplugs, looked at me with innocent, clueless eyes. Whatever, he couldn't hear me anyway. Just then, Ethan approached. Ethan, it's been so long. I flashed my sweetest smile. Amelia, you've become even more beautiful. Ethan replied warmly. His eyes then fell on Samuel, and he looked surprised. Isn't this Mr. Collins? I've been trying to reach him. Samuel didn't react. Mr. Collins? Ethan politely extended his hand. I intercepted it, sighing dramatically. Ethan, you don't know this, but Mr. Collins, he's deaf now. He fell into the water while, entertaining a model on a boat, and it damaged his brain. He has meningitis now. The Collins family abandoned him, and I've taken him in out of the goodness of my heart. He thinks I'm his mother now and won't let go of me. As I spoke, I subtly pinched Samuel's back, our agreed-upon signal. Samuel immediately gave Ethan a wide, friendly smile. Ethan looked shocked. I had no idea Mr. Collins had suffered such a tragedy. I guess our project with him is on hold. Which is perfect because Clark Group can take over. I have the proposal and contract ready. I jumped in, batting my lashes. Ethan, are you free tonight? We could have a drink, just the two of us, and discuss. Before I could finish, Samuel's arm tightened around my waist. He leaned his head on my shoulder, murmuring, Darling, I feel so dizzy. Ethan frowned. Amelia, what did he just call you? I clenched my teeth. He said, Daddy. Yes, he's confused. He probably thinks I'm his dad. Ethan nodded, though still looking puzzled. I tried to hand Samuel off to Elliot, but Samuel clung to me, his face nuzzling into my neck as he kissed my ear. Darling, I feel so sick. Am I dying? If this kept up, the jig would be up. I had no choice but to cut my conversation with Ethan short and take Samuel to the lounge. As soon as we entered the room, I shoved Samuel onto the couch and planted my stiletto on his chest. Samuel, drop the act. This was a test. After all, his behavior earlier had been suspicious. In the world of business, you could never be too careful. But Samuel curled up on the couch, his tall frame scrunched uncomfortably. My head. It hurts so bad. Darling, where are you? Did you leave me? Honestly, his face was too handsome for his own good. No matter what expression he made, it was impossible not to feel a flutter in your chest. Damn his pretty face. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that he was, in fact, a patient. I didn't want anything serious to happen to him, so I reached out to feel his forehead. I'm here. Does your head really hurt? Yes. Can you rub it for me, please? He let out a soft whimper, his long fingers clutching the hem of my dress as if afraid I'd leave. I couldn't resist his pleading. Sitting down, I began massaging his temples. Before I knew it, Samuel had pulled me into his arms and kissed me. In the haze of the moment, I thought I felt my phone vibrate. I tried to reach for it, but Samuel's kiss deepened, trapping me. By the time the kiss ended and I checked my phone, there were no new messages. Samuel had already fallen asleep, his arms still wrapped around me. I tried to move, but he was too heavy. When I texted Elliot, there was no response. Eventually, I closed my eyes and drifted off. The sound of my phone ringing jolted me awake. I answered, and Elliot's frantic voice came through. Ms. Clark, Ethan said he texted you, but you didn't reply. He had no choice but to sign the contract with Collins Group. Texted me? That's impossible. I didn't. I paused, remembering the vibration I'd felt during the kiss. I turned sharply to look beside me. The bed was empty. Samuel was gone. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. So, Samuel had kissed me senseless, deleted my messages, and then disappeared? Was this his idea of playing dirty? I hung up, slipped on my heels, and stormed out of the room, my long dress swishing angrily behind me. I hadn't gone far when I spotted Samuel on the second-floor hallway, entangled with two long-haired beauties. I marched over, grabbed his arm, and hissed, "Samuel, you dare flirt with women right in front of me?" Samuel turned, saw it was me, and immediately pulled me into a hug. "Honey, you're finally here. These women keep saying I'm their brother, but they smell awful. I think I'm going to be sick." I blinked. "What? I'm wearing perfume," one of the women protested. "Wait, did you just call her honey?" The blonde glared at me. "She's Amelia Clark, the eldest daughter of the Clark family, your biggest rival." "Samuel, have you been cursed or something?" "Shut up," Samuel snapped, his voice cold. "How dare you insult my wife? She's my rival because she's beautiful and capable. You're just ugly and easy to deal with. One look in the mirror and you'd scare yourself to death." The blonde gaped, on the verge of tears. "Samuel, stop bothering me. I don't want to be the heir of the Collins family. I just want to be my wife's husband." With that, Samuel took my hand and led me away. Things were getting complicated. I couldn't tell if Samuel was acting or if he was genuinely like this. If he was faking it, he was too convincing. If he wasn't, then he might actually have feelings for me. But that was even more impossible. I took Samuel back to the hospital for another brain scan. Outside the emergency room, Elliot updated me. "Ms. Clark, the contract with Ethan was signed by a representative from Collins Group. We can't confirm if Mr. Collins ordered it, but maybe he really hasn't recovered?" As I pondered this, a car pulled up beside me. "Amelia, do you have a moment to talk?" It was Elijah Collins, Samuel's illegitimate half-brother. I smirked. "So, you're the bastard son." Elijah gritted his teeth. "I heard my missing brother is with you." I feigned shock. "Oh, is your brother missing? I think he's lost his memory, which is why you're manipulating him." Elijah's eyes narrowed. "Amelia, I know you're in it for the business, and I admire that. Let's work together. Give me my brother. If I cripple his legs, my grandpa will kick him out of the company. The Collins won't let a disabled man take control. Once I inherit, I'll give you a 10% profit share on the new district project for 5 years. How's that?" I had to admit, the offer was tempting. A businessman could never refuse profit, especially when it was handed to you on a silver platter. But I didn't quite like Elijah. Soon, the test results came back. Samuel's condition hadn't improved. On the ride home, I asked Samuel if he'd deleted my messages. He played with my fingers, his expression innocent, his eyes shimmering with emotion. It was as if one more question from me would make him jump out of the car to prove his innocence. Even Elliot, sitting in the passenger seat, couldn't help but turn around and say, "Ms. Clark, don't push him. He said it wasn't him, and the doctor said he needs rest. Please, don't bully him." The driver chimed in, "Ms. Clark, Mr. Collins really loves you. When you weren't around just now, he was practically frantic." See? It wasn't just me being delusional. Lately, Samuel had been too devoted to me. Even my assistant and driver were starting to take his side. At this rate, they'd soon switch allegiances entirely. But I refused to believe Samuel could act without slipping up somewhere. After all, everyone has a weakness. As Samuel's sworn rival, I'd once spent a fortune investigating his vulnerabilities. Sure, he was scared of horror movies and haunted houses, but those were too trivial. He could easily fake his way through them. After some thought, I decided to take him to meet Elise, his unrequited love. Back in middle school, Samuel had been obsessed with her. He'd send her gifts every day and even wait outside her dance classes at night. Despite it being a girls-only activity, Samuel and I had been compared since childhood. Back then, I thought he was about to start dating her, so I rushed into a relationship of my own just to keep up. But that jerk reported me, and I ended up cleaning the school building for a month as punishment. Surprisingly, Samuel never ended up with Elise. Over the years, rumors swirled about their tragic love story, the unattainable beauty and the heir to a fortune, forever chasing and retreating. Samuel had never had a serious girlfriend since, and I assumed he was still pursuing her. When we arrived at the film set, the director and producers were visibly nervous. After all, my company was the biggest investor in this TV drama. Elise, however, was thrilled. Samuel, Amelia, what brings you here? She said my name, but her eyes were glued to Samuel. Suspicious. Before I could devise a plan, Elise eagerly handed us cups of coffee. I just bought these. They're really good. She handed the first cup to Samuel. Samuel, however, remained cold and distant. Thank you, but no. Elise froze. Wow, he's really committed to this act. Let's see how long he can keep it up in front of his unrequited love, I thought. As I was thinking, Elise suddenly turned and handed the coffee to me instead. I reached out to take it, but before I could, she flipped her wrist, spilling the entire cup of scalding coffee on her own hand. Well, I wasn't expecting that. Elise let out a cry of pain, and Samuel immediately stood up and rushed over. My eyes lit up. Finally, he was going to break character, but instead of going to Elise, Samuel came to me. He took my hand, which had been slightly splashed, and gently blew on it, his fingers brushing over the reddened skin. Does it hurt? I was stunned. No, but your unrequited love just got burned. Elise, her eyes watering, protested. Amelia, what are you talking about? I've worked hard to get where I am. How can you suggest I'm just here because of connections? What will everyone think? Samuel shot her an icy glare. You worked hard? You took credit for coffee someone else bought? Is that your idea of hard work? Elise paled. And do you know how much my wife's hands are worth? Even a single drop of coffee on her skin could bankrupt you. Elise was stunned. Wife? I was stunned too. Did he like Elise or not? How could he be this ruthless? To stop Samuel from saying anything else, I decided to pull him away. But as I turned, a burly figure emerged from the crowd of extras. You bitch. How dare you burn Elise? The man lunged at me with a prop knife. Before I could react, Samuel pulled me into his arms, shielding me. The blade slashed deeply across his forearm. The entire set erupted into chaos. The heir to the Collins family injured, everyone was terrified. Luckily, the wound wasn't deep. The attacker turned out to be an obsessed fan of Elise's who'd been lurking among the extras. Ironically, Samuel's actions had saved her life. We didn't go back home but instead booked a room at the hotel near the set. While the doctor bandaged Samuel's arm, he kept insisting they check me for injuries. I glared at him. Sit still. Do you want to lose that arm? Samuel grinned, holding out his other hand. My arm says it wants a hug from you. The man who'd been so cold and aloof moments ago was now acting like a giant Samoyed. As my eyes lingered on his bloodied arm, I felt a lump in my throat. To hide it, I snapped. Why did you take that knife for me? Are you stupid? What if it had hit something vital? You're my wife. What if I wasn't? Samuel fell silent, his eyes locked on mine. I couldn't bear to meet his gaze and excused myself, claiming I had work to do. Samuel's sudden act of heroism had thrown all my plans into disarray. I needed time to think. I had Elliot take Samuel to a villa in the suburbs, arranging for a couple of maids to look after him. But the next morning, Elliot informed me that Samuel was missing. Using my connections, I quickly discovered that Elijah had taken him to an abandoned power plant in the suburbs. My mind flashed back to Elijah's words. If I cripple my brother's legs. Elliot reminded me, Ms. Clark, the signing ceremony with Concord Collective is about to start. If we don't leave now, we'll be late. This deal had taken me weeks of effort to secure. Missing it would be a huge loss. But if I went, I couldn't stop thinking about Samuel's smug grin as he called me, honey. I didn't want to owe him anything. Clenching and unclenching my fists, I finally stood. Gather the team. We're going to the power plant. When I arrived, the abandoned building was packed with people. In the center stood a tall man, his foot planted on someone's head. Trash, he sneered, his voice cold and mocking. You'd need another 500 years to even think about challenging me. That voice, it sounded familiar. As I stepped inside, the man turned, and it was Samuel. Elijah was pinned beneath his foot. Blood smeared across his face from the pressure of Samuel's shoe. Samuel's eyes lit up when he saw me, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Honey, you're here. You're really something. Selling off your husband to someone like this. You've got a cold heart, don't you? His arrogant demeanor was nothing like the amnesic man I'd known. My eyes widened as I realized the truth. You've been pretending this whole time, haven't you? Who, me? Samuel smirked. You're the one who said I was the stay-at-home husband. I glared at him. I didn't sell you to Elijah. He came on his own. Still lying? Samuel's gaze hardened. You were flirting with him at the hospital. Don't think I didn't notice. So, he'd regained his memory that night at the banquet. That's why he deleted Ethan's text. Samuel, watch your tone. I wasn't flirting with him. My temper flared, and I shot back. The men from the Collins family are all show and no substance. I'd never waste my time on them. Samuel's expression darkened. He stepped away from Elijah and walked toward me. Oh, I seem to recall you begging me to go faster that night. Yes, because your skills were so terrible I just wanted it to be over. Samuel's face turned stormy. He closed the distance between us, and I pulled off my belt, ready to fight. As he reached me, I looped the belt around his neck. He grabbed my waist, pulling me into a rough kiss. You lunatic, let go of me. Samuel cupped my chin, his kiss punishing. I yanked the belt tighter, kicking and shoving him as we tumbled into a patch of tall reeds. He pinned me down, my hands bound with the belt, my dress hiked up. Amelia, say it again. Is my technique really that bad? Outside, Elliot and my team tried to intervene, but Samuel's men held them back. While they fought outside, Samuel and I fought in the reeds. By the end, my makeup was smeared, and I was biting down on Samuel's shoulder to keep from crying. He leaned close, his teeth grazing my ear. Amelia, you tricked me into being your husband. Fine, but then you went behind my back with Ethan? What's so great about him? Your taste is terrible. I sobbed, furious. Ethan's better than you in every way. The worst mistake I ever made was pretending you were my husband. Samuel laughed, a low, dangerous sound. Keep talking. I trembled but refused to back down. Is that all you've got? A dog could do better. His response was a growl. Amelia, you're going to regret this. Samuel didn't just want to ruin me. He wanted to destroy Clark Group. He went after our deals with a vengeance, even if it meant losing money. His relentless attacks left me scrambling. The entire company was in chaos, and even my parents, who'd long since stepped back from the business, called to express their concern. Desperate, I reached out to Ethan. Thankfully, he was understanding and agreed to work with Clark Group. I packed my bags and flew overseas. By the time I reached the hotel, it was already evening. I didn't rest, immediately getting ready and slipping into a red dress. I had always been confident in my looks. After all, everyone except Samuel had always called me beautiful. When I knocked on Ethan's suite, the door was slightly ajar. A tall figure sat on the couch, his back to me. I walked in, holding a glass of wine, my voice light. Ethan, sorry I'm late. I sat down on the couch, and froze. Samuel turned to me, his expression icy. I startled, spilling wine all over myself. What, not happy to see me? Samuel lounged on the couch, his eyes narrowed. If it were Ethan, would you have already thrown yourself at him? I glared. Watch your mouth. Where's Ethan? What did you do to him? Samuel smirked. Killed him. Thought I'd make a stew. Samuel, I slammed my glass down and stood to leave, but Samuel's voice stopped me cold. Amelia, take one more step and see what happens. I turned, arms crossed. What, so I can stay here and let you bully me? I'm the bully? Who sold me out first? I told you it wasn't me. Samuel grabbed my hand. I tried to pull away, but my heel caught, and I fell into his lap. His arm wrapped around my waist, his face stern but his voice softening. Did you hurt yourself? Where does it hurt? Don't touch me. Samuel ignored my protests, his hands moving over me as if checking for injuries. When he didn't find any, his expression softened slightly, but when his hand brushed my forehead, his brows furrowed. You're burning up. Why didn't you say anything? I bit my lip, refusing to answer. I hated how easily I got sick when I was stressed or upset. Amelia, are you an idiot? Samuel scooped me up without warning, his steps urgent as he carried me out of the room. What are you doing? Taking you to a doctor. Do you want to burn yourself out? Stop squirming. He adjusted his grip on me, his tone mocking. You've lost weight. Were you so heartbroken over Ethan you couldn't eat? I retaliated by biting his arm, only to regret it when my teeth met solid muscle. Samuel chuckled darkly. Put me down. I'm fine, but I wasn't fine. I ended up with a high fever, diagnosed with the flu after my immune system took a hit. During my hospital stay abroad, Samuel took care of me. He didn't hire a nurse. He stayed in the room, brought me meals, and made sure I was comfortable. I couldn't figure out what his angle was. Was he fattening me up for slaughter? On the 5th day, Ethan came to visit. I hadn't washed my hair in a week and kept checking myself in the mirror, trying to make it look presentable. Samuel stood nearby, his arms crossed. Stop fussing. You're in a hospital bed, not auditioning for a shampoo commercial. It's not like that. You didn't seem this concerned when you were around me. I ignored him, hoping to sneak a private conversation with Ethan. When Ethan arrived, he brought flowers, and his new boyfriend. Samuel raised an eyebrow, barely suppressing a laugh. I glared at him. What was so funny? After Ethan left, my forced smile faded. With him in a relationship, I couldn't approach him for business without causing misunderstandings. My plans were ruined again. I slumped in bed, feeling defeated. Samuel brought me lunch, setting it up neatly with utensils. I'm not hungry, I mumbled. You're really that hung up on him? Samuel wiped my hands with a wet wipe, his tone cold. He's gay. Amelia, you're going to starve yourself over him? Truthfully, I wasn't that heartbroken. My feelings for Ethan weren't as deep as I'd thought. I'd admired him in college, but it was more habit than anything else. Mind your own business. I shoved a spoonful of food into my mouth, chewing angrily. Samuel plucked a grain of rice from the corner of my mouth. Slow down. You're such a mess. Oh, like you're one to talk. What about Elise? You've been hung up on her for years. Speak of the devil. Elise showed up unexpectedly, and Samuel's expression turned icy. They stepped out to talk, and I couldn't resist sneaking out to eavesdrop. Was Elise bad-mouthing me? We'd never gotten along in school. She was the queen of passive-aggressive tactics, and I'd fallen for it more than once. Now that Samuel had me in his grasp, what if he sided with her? I found them in the hallway. Elise's eyes were red as she whispered, Samuel, I know you haven't changed. Samuel's back was to me, so I couldn't see his face, but I imagined it was full of tenderness. Great. Just finished mocking me, and now he's flirting with his unrequited love. Amelia? Elise spotted me. What are you doing there? Samuel and I were just catching up. We were thinking of getting together? My fingers curled in my pockets, and I cut her off. Oh, how nice. My boyfriend's here to take me home. Don't mind me. Samuel turned sharply, his gaze piercing. Boyfriend? Yeah, I've been seeing someone new. He's studying here, Theodore. I waved my phone dismissively and walked away, ignoring Samuel's glare. For some reason, my nose stung. Back in my room, I saw the meal Samuel had prepared for me, along with the cut fruit and desserts in the fridge. All things he'd done for me over the past few days. He'd taken care of me with the kind of attention I'd only ever gotten from my mother. I sat back down to finish my meal, but no matter how much I tried, I couldn't eat. My chest felt heavy, like a weight had settled there. Jerk. Absolute jerk. He had got his unrequited love on his mind, yet here he was, showering me with attention. So what if he was in love with someone else? I could be in love too. That night, I checked myself out of the hospital and flew back home. The next day, I made it official on social media. I was in a relationship. Theodore, a handsome guy introduced by a friend, had apparently had a crush on me for a while. In the business world, I'd learned to see through people. It was clear he was more interested in my family's wealth than me, but I didn't care. I had money, and that was enough. I started flaunting my new relationship online, posting pictures with Theodore every day. Suddenly, Samuel stopped contacting me. He even halted his attacks on Clark Group's business. Too busy with Elise, I guess. The thrill of showing off my relationship faded quickly. I decided to take a trip to clear my head. Theodore insisted on coming along, saying he wanted to go shopping. I didn't mind. At the airport, I ran into Samuel and Elise. Samuel's eyes flicked to Theodore, and his expression turned stormy. He stood there, hands in his pockets, ignoring me completely, afraid Elise might get jealous. Huh? I smirked, reaching up to adjust Theodore's collar. Later, I'll take you shopping for a luxury watch. Elise was the first to speak. Amelia, what a coincidence. Don't talk to her. Samuel cut in coldly. I snorted. Who said I wanted to talk to you? Before the plane even took off, Samuel and I were already at each other's throats. As luck would have it, we'd booked the same hotel. Theodore and I had originally booked separate rooms, but I didn't want Samuel to mock me, so I let Theodore stay in my suite. The next morning, Samuel saw us leaving the room together, his eyes darkening. Amelia, where are you two headed today? Elise asked as we waited for the elevator. She looked pale, like she hadn't slept well. Too much activity last night? I snorted. The beach. Mind if we join you? Elise gave me a pleading look. I'd like to go too. I shrugged. Sure, whatever. Samuel stayed silent, his face like thunder, as if someone owed him a fortune. That's the same look he gave me in middle school when I started dating. He even reported me to the teacher. At the beach, Theodore and I went surfing while Samuel and Elise stayed on the shore, talking. What could they possibly have to talk about? I kept glancing back, and in my distraction, I fell into the water. Lunch was at a packed restaurant, and the four of us ended up sharing a table. Samuel was still in a foul mood. When I asked him what he wanted to order, he ignored me. Furious, I started feeding Theodore instead. Samuel's eyes narrowed, and he began feeding Elise. Elise looked terrified, almost trembling, but I was too focused on one-upping Samuel to notice. For every bite he fed Elise, I fed Theodore too. By the end of the meal, Samuel and I hadn't eaten a thing, but Theodore and Elise were stuffed. The consequences were immediate. They both ended up with acute gastroenteritis and had to rush to the hospital that night. In the emergency room, I felt a pang of guilt watching Theodore on an IV. I pulled out my phone and transferred him $100,000. Theodore grinned. Thanks, Amelia. If you ever need someone to make your boyfriend jealous again, call me. I frowned. What are you talking about? He winked. You and that guy, Samuel, you're into each other, right? You're a couple, aren't you? I froze, my tongue tied. Don't talk nonsense. Theodore, with all the confidence of someone who'd seen it all before, said, that guy's crazy about you. He's been glaring at me the whole trip like he wants to kill me. Stop it. He's got someone else, that woman, but you like him too. Amelia, the way you're acting? That's love. I would never. Before I could finish, a deep voice interrupted. Excuse me. I turned to see Samuel standing in the doorway, his expression sharp. The police are here. They need your statement. I never expected the police were here for Elise. She was on an IV, but when she saw the officers, she practically leapt out of bed, holding out her hands. Thank goodness. Arrest me. Take me away. It was hard to imagine what Samuel had done to make her so terrified. The police asked me about my encounters with Elise and Elijah. Turns out, they'd been working together all along. Elise had overheard my plans for Samuel's accommodations and passed the information to Elijah. Elijah had committed crimes in this country, and Elise was an accomplice. Samuel had brought her here to assist with the investigation. After the police left, Samuel and I stood outside the hospital. I glanced at him. Hey, you're not going to cry, are you? After all, she'd been his unrequited love for years. Samuel scoffed. Do I look insane? I raised an eyebrow. You're heartless. You've liked Elise for so long. Who said I liked her? You sent her gifts every day in middle school, waited for her after dance class. Shut up. Samuel's eyes locked onto mine, intense and unyielding. Amelia, I was sending those gifts to you. I blinked. You're lying. You sent them to her. I got your seats mixed up. I fell silent. Why do you think I sent peanut products? Because you've loved peanuts since you were a kid. My brain short-circuited for a moment. Wait, no, but you used to wait for her after class. Weren't you in that dance class too? I went every night to wait for you. And what did you do? The next day, you started dating some guy, just like that pretty boy today. He practically growled. Amelia, are you trying to drive me insane? His intense gaze made me squirm, and I turned to leave. I need to think about this. Samuel strode forward, grabbing my arm and pulling me back. Running away again? He leaned down, his face inches from mine, his warm breath brushing my skin. Break up with him, okay? What? That weakling getting an IV in there. You don't like him. You didn't sleep together last night. How do you know? You just admitted it. Damn it, he's cornering me. I punched his chest. What does it matter to you if I break up with him? Why do you care? Because I like you. Samuel's eyes locked onto mine, burning with an intensity that left me breathless. My hand froze mid-punch. My face flushed, my heart racing out of control. What are you saying? I'm saying I like you. Samuel likes Amelia. He's liked her for a long time. Suddenly, Samuel dropped to one knee, took my hand, and pressed a kiss to the back of it. Do you believe me now? My Amelia. No. I stubbornly denied it. Samuel stood, his face close to mine again. I thought he was going to kiss me, but instead, he whispered, Amelia, none of those other guys were right for you. It's been over 10 years. Can you give me a chance? Let me prove I'm the one. My mind went blank. Whenever he got too close, I couldn't think straight. I pushed against his chest. Back off. Answer me first. Say yes, and I won't kiss you. You're blackmailing me now. I glared at him, but Samuel's dark eyes were filled with a vulnerability I'd never seen before. His Adam's apple bobbed, his voice rough with tension. I'm scared if you don't say yes today, you'll be with someone else tomorrow. Every time I learned you were with someone, it tore me apart. I wanted you to break up, but I was also afraid of it. I was afraid that even if you did, I still wouldn't be next. Amelia, give me a chance. Just one, please. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. All I managed was a reluctant, okay. I wanted to keep our relationship a secret for a while, but Samuel, the hopeless romantic, had other plans. As soon as we returned to Prosperia, he bought out the giant billboards on every skyscraper. They all displayed the same message. Samuel is Amelia's boyfriend. They stayed lit, day and night, for an entire week. Now the whole city knew. My social media exploded. Everyone was saying the sun must be rising from the west because Amelia and Samuel were actually dating. Theodore, after our breakup, became an overnight sensation thanks to the hype. He went live on social media, dramatically recounting how Samuel had confessed to me. Turns out, he'd been secretly watching that night at the hospital. Samuel seemed pleased with his loyalty, and even sent him a $100,000 tip under his real name. The official Clark Group Weibo was flooded with comments. Amelia, give me a chance too. Will you give me $1 million? Every time I saw those, I cringed. Samuel was embarrassing me to no end. Even my mom called to ask about Samuel. I stammered, "We're just trying it out." She chuckled. "Good. I've watched Samuel grow up. When you were kids, he always wanted to bathe with you. We used to say he wanted to marry you." I fell silent. So he had his eyes on me since we were kids. I thought dating Samuel would feel strange, transitioning from sworn rivals to intimate partners. But surprisingly, we got along incredibly well. Whether it was food, hobbies, or the bedroom, we were like two old friends who knew each other inside out. If I wiggled my toes at home, he'd know exactly which snack I was craving. Everything fit perfectly, except the frequency of our activities. I continued being Amelia, running my company as usual, but my life became richer, warmer, with Samuel always caring for me. Every time I came home from a business trip, there'd be a warm cup of soy milk and light on for me. The day Samuel proposed, it was completely unexpected. We finally had a rare day off and were strolling through the supermarket, hand in hand. I was picking out meat when I asked, "What do you want for dinner?" "Amelia." "Yes? Marry me." I froze. When I turned, Samuel was already on one knee, holding out a ring. He was in casual clothes, his tall frame kneeling there, looking impossibly handsome. "I want to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with you every day. I want to hold your hand and shop with you until we're old. I want to wake up and see you first thing every morning. I love you more than yesterday, but less than tomorrow. Marry me." Samuel looked up at me, his eyes burning with a love that took my breath away. Our eyes met, and in that moment, what we saw wasn't surprise, it was peace. The ultimate destination and definition of love is peace. I smiled, a touch of pride in my expression as I held out my hand. "I'm not thrilled about the lack of flowers, but since your attitude's been decent, here, put the ring on me." Samuel carefully slid the ring onto my finger, his hands trembling ever so slightly. This was the man who could sign billion-dollar deals without batting an eye. Yet here he was, shaking as he placed a ring on my hand. When he stood, I rose onto my tiptoes, wrapped my arms around his neck, and kissed him. "Tonight, I'll reward you with a night you'll never forget."